If you've just finished your first quilt top from a pattern, you may have seen in the instructions something that says layer, quilt, and bind. What on earth does that mean? I mean, you know that this is not a quilt. It's just a piece of fabric, right, that you sewed together. It looks nice, but it's not a quilt yet. How do you turn that into a quilt? Well, the first step of those instructions say to layer, right, and then quilt. So you might just think you need to layer the top and then the batting and the backing, but that's not quite true. There's one extra step in there before you start to quilt, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this video. Before we start the basting process, there is one more step that you really want to do before you start layering and basting your quilt. And that is to decide what that pattern is that you're going to quilt on the quilt. Why? Because if you need to mark anything on the quilt top so that you can help have some guides as you're doing your quilting, you want to do that while it's still just a piece of fabric. That's because you want to be able to put it down on a hard surface and use your marking tools and be able to mark that. So decide how you're going to quilt your top and then get ready with your backing and your batting. You want to have a backing that's about 2 to 3 inches wider on all around than your quilt top, and also batting that's also about the same size, a few inches bigger all the way around your quilt top. You can see here that my backing and my batting are both a little bit bigger than my quilt top. That's about how it should be, or even bigger. I made mine a little smaller so that it would fit in the camera. The two most popular ways of basting a quilt are pin basting and spray basting. The very first step in both doing spray basting and doing pin basting is to tape your backing right side down. So the part that's pretty is going to be down towards the table or the floor, wherever you're working, depending on the size of your quilt. That's going to be facing down, so this is the wrong side of the fabric. You'll see here that I use muslin. That's because on all my table runners and my wall hangings, I go for the cheapest thing because it won't be seen, and that would be muslin. And I'm just going to smooth and spread this out, and then using just plain old masking tape, tape it to my table. You don't want to stretch the fabric, but you do want to have it nice and smooth. I just smooth it out and then I tape it, and if it looks like it might be a little wrinkled in a corner, I might adjust that a little bit so everything's nice and smooth and fairly taut but not tight and stretched. The next step is to lay that batting down, the batting that you've cut to size, down on top of the backing. And you can just smooth it out. And if you have a light backing like mine, you do want to make sure that there's nothing on the back that's going to show through when you're all done quilting. So you're going to smooth the batting down as well. So first we're going to demonstrate how to do spray basting. Now I don't like to actually spray things in my studio. I'm not a big fan of chemicals, and to tell you the truth, mostly do pin basting, but I will show you how spray basting is done because it's really helpful for large quilts especially. All the basting spray will be done spraying on the batting. So the first thing we need to do is baste the batting to the backing. We're going to fold back our batting like this. Then we would spray this little section of batting here and fold it down and then just smooth it onto the backing. And then we would spray this part of the batting, and then again just lay that down and smooth it down, and it would be stuck with the basting spray. Then we could come over this side, just tug it back until we've hit where the basting spray is. And then again, with a big quilt, it helps if you do sections like that. So we'd spray this with the basting spray, smooth it out, and then spray this section, and then smooth that down like that. With the quilt top, we're going to take a very similar approach, except again, we're going to be spraying the batting, not the quilt top. I have my top spread out, and I'm going to fold it back the same way as I did with the batting. Except this time, I'm going to spray some of the batting, fold the top down, make it stick, then spray the rest of the batting, fold the top down, and then the same thing with this side. We would spray the batting, fold the top down, spray the batting, fold the top down. And when everything was nice and stuck, you would just smooth it, make sure it's all smooth and stuck, and then you could untape it and it would be ready to quilt. For pin basting, the very first thing again is to smooth the batting down over the backing, just like this. And you're not going to have to, you don't have to worry about it sticking. Just the batting, because it's fuzzier, will hold it there enough for this next set part. And then we put the top right on top like that and smooth everything out. So we have our backing is taped down to the table or floor, and then we just have our batting and then our top layered on top. So with pin basting, you use safety pins so you're not sticking yourself while you're doing the quilting, and you use these very special safety pins. They have a little curve in the bottom that makes it a little easier to stick them through the fabric. And generally, you pin every 4 inches in a big grid. If you have quilting lines that you got marked on here, you can try to avoid the quilting lines so you don't have to worry so much about taking the pins out as you go, though you probably will take the pins out as you go. So you just stick the pin in, that little curve makes it easier. And I generally start by putting all the pins in first. And I do want to point out that you would not want to do this on like a fine dining room table, because I am pinning and probably scratching a little bit the top of the table that this is on. The pin is actually, the pin tip, the sharp pin tip is running along the top of the table. So make sure you're wary of where you are pinning. Now you may have noticed I just put all the pins in. I haven't closed them yet. And that's because with this, everything being taut and spread out like this, you don't really want to like do a lot of manhandling. It's a little hard to close them. I guess I did just get that one closed, but there is a very inexpensive but really useful tool called the Quick Clip, and you can get this on Amazon or in your local sewing store. And it has these little ridges on it here, and you just put one of those ridges underneath the pin part, underneath like that, and then you can just use your other hand and close that. It goes very, very quickly. This method of taping everything down and then spreading the batting and the top over it can also be used just if you want to tie your quilt. If you're just going to put quick little stitches through with yarn or something else, you can do that now with everything laid out. You can just do stitch, 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 and even leave like the tails in between and then tie it later. So you would want to do the same procedure for that. Also, I wanted to mention that hand quilters do this same thing, except not with pins, because the pins would get in the way of the quilting hoop. So they just use big giant stitches. They take a needle and make a stitch and make a stitch and make a stitch and make a stitch all the way across the quilt. You wouldn't want to do that if you're doing machine quilting, because all those extra threads hanging around in the back would get in the way of the machine. When you got all your pins in, you can take the tape off, take your quilt right off, and it's ready to quilt. It actually even feels like a quilt now, so this is always a really exciting, fun time for me because I feel like I've actually made a quilt. So the next step is to do the quilting. I have a video linked that shows you how to do basic straight line machine quilting using a walking foot, And after that, another video that shows you how to put the binding around the edge.